There we go. Mr. Glenn. Audio trouble. First episode. Starting off with technical difficulties. I
Should
hear
be
you.
connecting now. Okay, good. How are you doing, man? All
Um,
good?
good, but you're a little bit soft on the audio levels.
Better now?
A bit, a bit.
I can't max anything out on my end, apparently.
Maybe I can. This is why we didn't announce this, right? This is the test edition. We just
Trial and
figure it
error
out
mode.
as we go. Let's see if I can somehow. I can boost your volume on my end. So at least I can hear you better. That's one. How's life, Glenn? Remember,
Good.
we're live, so whatever you
Ah,
share is out in the open.
I wasn't aware that we're already live.
We start
Good.
live.
Okay, good. You start live.
You can see yourself
Um,
on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Twitter. X,
yeah,
sorry.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna look myself live. Good. Good. Things are going well. I'm taking the summer shift at the office. All of my colleagues are having a baby boom, so it's gonna be a very intense summer for me.
So you're
How about you?
babysitting all the clients.
I'm not babysitting. I'm helping all the clients. All the clients are self-sustainable.
You live in the perfect world. Let me see it. I see
Uh,
Hussein is in the lobby, so let's get him in as well. And then
Hey guys.
hello. Let me get this. We're gonna start better banner away. Here we are, guys. So let me just start this off. Like I pinged you guys yesterday. Hey, I'm gonna do a live show. You guys should hop on, and you were both game to do it. So first of all, thank you for that. Um,
Yeah, I think just probably take whatever I say with a grain of salt because there's no research done to
exactly.
kind of talk
Nothing
about it.
to
Yeah.
prepare. Nothing to prepare. So we're
Yes.
gonna wing it. So
we're
I've been
gonna
playing
wing
with
it.
this idea for a long time. First of all, like creating a podcast is a lot of work because of the editing and the process and all the stuff around it. Whereas doing a live stream, you do it and then it's there, right? And then you have to accept that it's there. So there's a downside that you cannot edit anything that you say, right? So yeah, take that for what it is. But the benefit is you can just produce and you can just have a conversation and then get it out there. And I feel like with a lot of people, it's really fun to have these types of conversations, and this is a really good reason to do it. And then also record it, and then perhaps other people like to watch it as well. So the whole idea behind the data to value show is just talk about digital analytics broadest sense of the word. Could be like agency related stuff, could be like really data focus, could be really technical focus, can whatever we think is interesting. And I plan to invite as many interesting people and just talk for an hour and see what comes from that. So first two guys that popped into my head were you two. So let me do a short introduction about you guys from my point of view, and then you guys can correct me. But I think Hussein, you and I've been working together for 6 years, 7 years, something like that. We met
Yeah,
in
at least that. Yeah.
yeah, we met in
Yeah, I
San
think we met in
Francisco.
2017. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And yeah, I think I've been bugging you since then. That I think I remember sort of taking a lot of time, in that trip to kind of pick your brain about like how the agency world worked. And then
yeah.
yeah, I think we've been sort of working since sort of you got off the agency train and sort of went solo and like became independent. Yeah.
Yeah, so we collaborated on a bunch of clients. We actually still collaborate. Um, so Hussein, you run MarketLytics, which is a digital analytics agency in based out of Karachi, out of Pakistan, and yeah, you've been frequenting a lot of conferences. You're a world traveler. I think a lot of people have seen you around somewhere if they went to a digital analytics conference, and yeah, you got a great team of people helping a lot of fun clients. and we always end up having cool discussions about both the business side of things and the technical side of things. So good to have you on for this first show. And then Glenn, I don't remember where we met actually. Do you remember?
No, I have no idea. I was actually making the same reflection of where we met or where I met Hussain. I think I met Hussain through
Yeah.
Hussain connected us.
my colleagues who went to the Google Analytics Summit in San Francisco, probably like somewhere 2017. And then they said like,
Yeah, I think it was
if you go,
2018 when I met Max.
yeah, Max,
So
yeah. Max in San
yeah,
Francisco.
I think that was
and
then.
then,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I went the year after, and he connected me with Hussain. I don't think you went the year after, but I went, and then we started on the Measure Slack to having conversations, couple of calls, and a couple of ideas, like very much like what's happening now. And then I think Hussain introduced me to Rick or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I did that or you. Like, I think it was like somewhere in the middle because I also visited you guys at your last company, in Belgium. So I hung out and sort of worked from there for like I think a few days and sort of got a vibe of how you guys operate. And yeah, I think around then probably I think the three of us sort of kind of caught up as well. We have like this long abandoned Slack channel that we've not used in a while. So thanks to kind of Rick to kind of reactivating that.
This
it was
is
actually
the
a
version
miracle.
2.
I saw it. It's actually a miracle. I saw the bump yesterday.
But
yeah.
So Glenn, you are one of the 4 founders of Human37. Yeah.
Correct. There's 4 of us.
So you guys started 3 years ago, 2 years ago?
Yeah, June 2021.
Yeah. And I'm super impressed. Like I follow you guys. Obviously, I follow all of you on LinkedIn, so I see all the updates. But you guys have really gone super fast from like your ID to basically where you are right now. You work with a bunch of really amazing brands, and you are really, putting the stuff you talk about to work. I feel so. First of all, congrats on that and on the success. And you want to add anything to that? Maybe we can dive into the name because I find it a fascinating story.
Thank you. I think like the idea that before we started, it took a while to get the idea right. We have an agency past, so we kind of had an idea of how things worked. The agency we worked in wasn't still very successful, so we kind of looked into how things were working there to then take it into a more specific industry and move from there. So yeah, I think that experience certainly helped. On the name front, so Human37, 37 refers to AlphaGo, basically the most complex game in the world, or theoretically speaking. Google made this thing called AlphaGo, or Google DeepMind made it. There's a series or a documentary actually. It used to be on Netflix. I know it's still on YouTube. You can find it on the About section on our website if you're interested. But it tells the whole story about how the AI basically beat the world champion at the time, Lee Sedol, South Korean man. And it was said that it was too complex for a computer or an artificial intelligence unit to understand because it is exponentially more difficult than chess. But apparently it happened. Google was able to defeat the world champion multiple times. First time it happened was actually on Move 37 because the AI agent was able to understand so much data and predict so far in the future to make a winning move that a human would not ever be able to predict. And so the name Human37 comes from the connotation of, well, we use data in order to better understand things and to set ourselves up for success. But we do believe that the human remains in control because artificial intelligence, AI, data, analytics, all of these things, because our baseline is data, not necessarily AI, but data, is means to an end. And we believe that the humans should still be in control in order to make those decisions and be the strategists using the data. So that's the whole story about the name. Was decided in a kebab joint over lunch, by the way.
that really
good joint then.
Yeah, good joint.
I like MarketLytics and data to value from an SEO point of view, but I love Human37 from like a storytelling point of view. It's really and
I'm not gonna lie, it's not the most easy to remember. We get like Human36, Human35 emails and stuff. Like, that's a downside.
But I do think so. You came up with this name before the whole ChatGPT boom, right? So it actually
Yeah.
like the relevance increased over time. So that's
That's true.
that's even
That's true.
better.
That's true.
Cool. So yeah, obviously we have a high overlap. You could even say we are competitors, although I don't feel like we feel that way. But we definitely know a lot of the same stuff, and we like to brainstorm about the same stuff. So I want to actually start off with what extent have you guys seen the AI hype being actually applied in like actual work, not proof of concept stuff, but like bottom line result stuff so far? Because I know we're all playing with it, right? And we're all experimenting, and we're all, we have these ideas, but turning that into something in production for a client for various reasons is very much challenging. So I want to get your takes on that. I definitely have my take so far.
So to be honest, I've not seen it applied in my in my kind of day-to-day work, but we personally started using it for ourselves. That I think like the subscription is worth paying for, right? And like at the stage that we are at, right? So like I'm doing it a lot with giving it my transcriptions and like trying to asking it about like what's the main idea, or what was the main thing that the client was frustrated about, and like getting it to like summarize or like pull things out of it. But like a lot of people got sold on the idea of like a AI analyst, and in most cases, I don't think it's there yet. So where we've done these demos, we've not really seen them kind of go to production personally. So yeah, so I think I'm like seeing value of it, but probably not in like the marketing sense that people sort of like promoted so far.
Yeah, we actually on a shared client we explored a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I completely forgot about it because it wasn't
Yeah,
that
a lot of
relevant. Yeah.
potential. Like in theory, it has a lot of potential, but very hard to really get it into practice so far.
Mm.
Your take, Glenn?
I think it's kind of, I think about it the opposite way. The more CMOs, let's keep it with marketing, right? The more CMOs get hyped about AI, the more budget I get in order to fix everything that AI needs in order to function. I'm talking about data quality. And it kind of reminds me, a couple of years back in our previous job, we did this thing called like dynamic creative optimization, where on double click you would render like not entire banners but sections of banners, and they would on the fly overlap based on personalization, like real-time bidding. And once we brought out that case that showed the value and the uplift, everybody wanted it, but nobody wanted to work on the data layers that you needed in order to get there. And so once we had that case, it opened up like budget for the road in order to get there. And in general, like that's the thing I'm focused on and like making or ranting a lot about. Let's say I have AI budget one more time, please do, and then I'll ask about your data quality, because that's the input that we need, right? The other side of it is as well is with some clients we're having these conversations, but it's also fun exploring like what does endless personalization actually mean in your context. Imagine you're a bank, like okay, there's 50,000 users, like you're not going to personalize, or you could personalize for 50,000, but like it would be like hi Rick or hi Hussein, but in the end you still have to deal with like 5 or 6 products, right? So you might have a couple of variations, and then the rest will be nested in there. I think people sometimes overestimate like what personalization looks like, how far it should go to be effective, because people think about these extreme scenarios. And also artificial intelligence won't necessarily decide what the best move is for you. That's still your corporate strategy, I feel, or a sales strategy, or a customer lifetime strategy that you need to educate the agent about in order to say, hey, as a company, we believe that first this product should be sold, or this product makes sense in this scenario. And that's the world shaping or the world building in which that personalization can happen through the agent. And I feel like sometimes these things are getting confused as well, where people think like, I have an AI, I actually don't need to do anything. The AI will tell me what the next best offer for this person is. Well, actually, in a set of 6 products, you're perfectly capable of doing that yourself. So
Yeah.
that's what's in my head at the moment when it comes to AI.
Yeah. So actually, one the kind of use case I remember that we like executed last year is just journey kind of anything that like some like has to be kind of done at scale. So for example, this client that we're working with had uh, 10,000 of like products. Basically, these are like you can think of these as like nuts, bolts, and everything else in the middle. And they needed like translated and like translated from the manufacturer and them providing the description about that product to kind of their own library and a standard sort of format. So it was like fairly technical, but if they had like hired like a translator to do it, it would probably have taken them a lot of time. So like this is where we actually ended up using uh, OpenAI to really like do this at scale and like not only like translate the actual thing, but categorize them into like dozens of categories and subcategories automatically. And the accuracy was actually better than a human because it sort of understood what that thing was and in which category it should go. um, so I think that sort of use case I see like a lot more potential for versus like a creative use case where it's like you have to decide something versus like just here's something you can like here's something that is like rote and repetitive and just like you have to like do it at like 100,000 times or something, and you can like have an AI do it like much faster.
100%. I feel like so the only thing that we applied in practice is something that is really close to what you just described, Hussain, which is like we have a client with many thousands of SKUs across many markets in many languages, and then they had to construct the Google, what does Google call it, the shopping feed, right, for advertising. And Google released something I think they call it Feed Gen, which is like an open source project that Google, it's on their GitHub basically. And you use Gemini within GCP to basically prompt based on the input feed. You can then prompt iterations for different countries for these same products, and then it has like these ways of highlighting what's important about the product in the product title and in the description and stuff, which which then should help with click-through rates and stuff like that. So that's it's basically the work that nobody actually would want to be doing, and it's very
Yeah.
would be a horrible manual job, where it's actually doing a pretty good job. At least it's doing it way faster, right? And it's doing a pretty good job. I do feel like what Glenn said was basically what you said was garbage in, garbage out, right? So this is definitely an obvious theme, right? Where if you feed the algorithm with data that is not valuable, then you should not necessarily expect it to give back something of value, right? I do think, there's
that's
one
also
there's one interesting thing there where like because there's the training set and because there is the LLM itself, it kind of, you can give a little bit more garbage in than you could before, right, with the stuff we would be able to do before. So I feel like there's a little bit more leniency, let's say. But in the end, I will stick to my garbage in, garbage out principle, right? I think it's it's good practice anyhow. But yeah, it's very hard to on the end result. Like, I think, Glenn, what you also highlight a little bit, like, people kind of expect the LLM to be able to apply like the influence principles in personalization, right? Like create like a totally customized environment for somebody based on are they susceptible to like authority or like something like that. Where I feel like maybe it could happen, right? It's definitely not there right now. Also, perhaps because the framework of actually getting that decision of the LLM towards the user is not there right now. So maybe that's a piece of infrastructure that would need to get created. You have any thoughts on that?
I was on the train of thought. That's why I almost interrupted you at some point. Like when you, and I'm happy you kind of called it later. You said like the training set allows you for more leeway on the garbage, right? The interesting part is like usually when you do a POC, you almost do it in a sterile lab environment. Everything's like perfect, which means that like even if it works there, it's nowhere near ready to be unleashed in a production environment for a organization in production. Usually, right? Because the data quality typically before the data went to the lab to be tested, it got cleaned up, it got like somebody looked at it. Is this a good set? Is this not a good set? Because you're actually trying to achieve a specific result, and you're almost selecting the data in order to get to that result. Um, Coming back to my points, I like all of this. I like the POC in the lab. It's fine because then we can go back and let's see like, hey, if you put this in production, here are all the holes or all the things where it will break. Let's talk about the processes and the governance and like all of the things that nobody cares about because it's not sexy, to actually build fail safes in there and systemic processes in order to make sure that, well, we are going towards an environment where the quality that we've tested in the lab and yielded great results actually is close to the quality that we can put in production to actually get great production results. Because the thing, like you said, is garbage in, garbage out. I agree 100%. I'm convinced of it. The problem is like with AI, you're going to create garbage at an unprecedented scale that's going directly to your customers.
Yeah.
And you won't even notice because nobody's actually paying attention to it because it's all going to be automated. And so I think that that's one of the dangers. And I don't want to be a pessimist or a party pooper, but like that's the thing that a lot of people who have budget for AI and generative and all of those type of things don't look into necessarily, that it's only the output of what has been in the infrastructure or can be put in the infrastructure consistently in terms of quality, which means you need to talk to your data teams, which means you need to talk to all people who deal with data ingestion, data processing, what it looks like, labeling, all of these type of things, and actually also have a view on who owns all these processes, which in a lot of organizations, nobody really has visibility. Depending on how big your org is, it's very hard to actually retrace what's the origin of a data point, where does it come in, how does it get treated, what's the lineage, how did it end up looking the way it did. And so all of that visibility, again, it's not the most sexy work because everybody wants the like use case where you do a 55% uplift because of generative AI and personalization. But that won't work unless you have an actual understanding of where the data comes from and how the processes work in order to make sure that they're all secure and safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So actually, one thing I'm sort of curious about, why don't we give AI that like sexy job of maintaining data quality in some way, right? Rather than
It's a good point.
being on sort of the other end of that, right? So because if you could actually do that, that like is a job that no one wants, right? So as long as we are like the masters of AI, we could probably like have it do it for us. And like I'm like this is actually one of the things that I'm like sort of like from a agency perspective trying to implement internally is there's a lot of things that are process related that we need to do to make sure that we are consistent with like our deliverables and other things, but no one really wants to like own them because they're like very tedious. So for example, we do a lot of documentation, and we want to make sure that all of this is consistent and other things. And I feel like like having like an AI that just goes in and looks at those documents and says, okay, it is good enough or it is not good enough, rather than just doing like an exact match, which is what you would do previously, is a great point to kind of start with. Anything process or quality related where it's like you care about consistency more than kind of the creative part, right? Because I personally think Gen AI is like sort of confused in like what is capable of, because there's this component that is meant to kind of do creative things, right? Which I think is like a small part of the overall thing. The other part is like sort of pattern matching, right? It's like heavily doing how is something done 10 times before, and if like the other thing, given kind of that pattern, should continue in a certain way or not, right? It should like, it should like be pointing up or pointing down if like all 10 examples, show it like pointing a certain way, for example, right? So I feel like data quality is like a great kind of use case for that. I'm curious, like if you guys have, kind of thought about that or like seen it kind of implemented anywhere.
It's very funny that you mentioned it. I got in a debate last week on LinkedIn, whatever, on data quality, where one person was indeed saying like, yeah, AI is gonna contribute to the improvement of data quality, and I understand, and to some extent I agree. as long as people understand that AI is not going to fix it for you necessarily. It's not like the tool's not going to be, or the technology is not going to be the solution for the problem you don't want to fix, because it still requires a process in order to get it there. And so I think, like, I might be conservative on this. Let's hope I'm conservative on this. And there's a huge thing that I'm downplaying, maybe. Would be good news for everybody. But like, data observability in general is a practice that isn't necessarily embedded in every organization, I feel. And if you put in place the process of data observability and you enhance it with AI, with automatic documentation, automatic flagging, automatic transformation potentially, or at least suggested transformation that you need to manually approve, at that point you could have a very strong process and gateway, or like at least gateway to route bad data, good data, etc. But as long as that process doesn't exist, I don't necessarily think that the technology alone that you bring in to solve the problem is going to actually make the pain go away, because it will leave somewhere. It won't be owned by anybody. It won't have a place in the entire process. But as soon as you have data observability in place, I do think it's going to be very, very beneficial, because as you say, nobody likes to write document. Everybody complains when there's no documentation, but nobody wants to write it. Everybody complains when there's bad data, but nobody wants to maintain it, right? And so like, there's a space where AI can help or enhance that experience. But I still think, going back to the Human37 balance, that like, there's a process that should be owned by humans or put in place by humans, where the technology can act as a lever in order to enforce it.
Yeah, I feel like the whole data contract movement, if you want to call it that way, from the data engineering side of things, where everybody was suddenly super hyped up about every piece of data needs to have a contract, right? Which is basically like an agreement between system A and system B on what it should look like, how it should be transported, et cetera, et cetera. Like once you have that in place, which is the process that you mentioned, Glenn, it also allows for a great role for AI, right? So if you think about Snowplow, for instance, they have what they call the faulty data bucket, I think, right? Which is basically anything that doesn't adhere to the schema, and it falls into this bucket, right? I think that's a great use case where you could have AI look at it and give you some form of, this is what is coming in. Like, it could already give like an interpretation of what it thinks it is, or where it might come from, etc. Create the Jira
status report almost,
you know? Yeah. And I feel like, Hussain, you said one thing about your internal processes, and I feel like that is indeed right now the main thing where we use AI. So the meeting recorder that has the automated transcripts, that has the automated highlights, that has the automated to-dos out of the meeting. Then we use Notion. Now in Notion, you have like automated AI for basically everything you want to apply it to. And I'm only using it like for a fraction of things, but I feel like there's so much power in that, from a supporting knowledge workers and allowing them to focus on what they should be focusing on, and then enhancing the quality of all the supporting elements around them, let's say, right? Where normally either somebody would have to do it by hand, or it would not get done. In most cases, it would not get done, right? And now suddenly you can have a whole lot of quality in, like, somebody could start work on a project and all this research could have already been done, which would have normally taken up many hours, and now takes up, if you do it programmatically, nothing, or if you do it manually but with AI, takes a couple minutes. I think that the total quality of the services we provide definitely goes up because of AI, because it allows people to focus on the interesting problems where where they actually get paid for it, so to say. And that's something that doesn't necessarily, that's not necessarily a use case that's directly applied to a client, right? In the end result of a client, but it's definitely something that improves the work we do for clients.
Yeah, I think it's like sort of reducing your overhead in delivering the thing that you are hired to do, right? I think that is like the way I sort of think of it, because at the end of the day, like doing any work, or like kind of collaboration has a lot of overhead, right? Which is like unrelated to the actual problem at hand, or like the thing that you would have to do. But it's important because otherwise you would not really be able to deliver the thing that you set out to. Like your objective would not be met, right? So I do like feel there's a lot of opportunity for doing it, that way. It also probably is because I do not like to kind of talk to a lot of people. So I think, in a kind of a utopian world, it's just the AI and me, like sort of taking care of everything, independently. But yeah, like I think in practice, like what it boils down to is, I think what Glenn said, right? At the end of the day, someone has to like, prompt the AI, or like, read the response back from the AI, or like, sort of take an action based on like what what it gives you, and decide if it's the right action or not. And I think that is something that you probably cannot really sort of automate away, at least in the short term, right? And that is something that I've sort of also realized personally. Um, so I think like one sort of interesting use case, it's like a lot of people are pulling, is this, you have your own kind of analyst, that can answer any question for you in like 2 minutes, because you just prompt it and it gives you an answer. I think it has like some utility in terms of like the descriptive use cases, because a lot of these things are, what happened last week on X or Y, right? And it can sort of give you, this went up or this went down, or, this is how it changed. But I think like that is when like probably a real analyst needs to take over. So I feel like some of this, quick update or report type of work that all of us have to do, for clients occasionally, could be kind of reduced, because that could be done automatically, or there could be a layer that does it for you, and then you like sort of take over. But the actual interesting and kind of the use process which would be impactful for the business, still has to be done by a human that understands the context of the business, and is like able to relate why certain things changed, back to what the impact was, and all of those things.
Yeah, I do feel like the Google Analytics intelligence feature, right, the one that everybody laughed at. I think if you put a little bit more development in it, it will have a bit more value now, like where you can. So it's basically anomaly detection, but then have the LLM provide a little bit more context based on the description of the data set, and that will already take away like a lot of the urgent but not important tasks that get dished out to analysts, where they could be focusing on like more interesting long-term analysis, right? Like I definitely feel like a lot of that answering questions to people who are either unwilling or untrained to answer them themselves based upon the data. And usually they're not really interesting questions, but those people demand answers, so to say. I think that type of work, there's definitely a role there for like anomaly detection plus an LLM, let's say. Frees us up for other stuff.
I think if you, for example, like wanted to sell a lot of Gemini, subscriptions, Google should probably integrate it with GA4, and then there's like probably some profit to be made on that front.
I think they could give it away for free to us, at least for the first couple of years, for all the effort they've cost
for the pain
us.
of like using GA4.
I was gonna say to make up for the rest, right?
Yeah. Do you guys have a like more interesting takes on AI, or do you guys wanna pivot to another topic?
What else do you have up your sleeve?
Well, I was figuring with Glenn in the call, we need to touch upon the CDPs, and I wanna pick up the composable versus centralized monolith CDP discussion a little bit.
It's
right?
so 2023, Rick.
No, it's still relevant. But let me let me kick it off. So for those listening unaware, I don't think there will be many people who are unaware, right? But CDP is a customer data platform, which is like a term that got created for like analytics platforms that also could take action. I think that's the best way to describe it, right? So you have your data coming in, you can create a segment or an audience or whatever you want to call it, and then you can also usually synchronize that with, in most cases, the default would be an email marketing platform, but then perhaps also with the advertising platforms to take actions upon who did what and falls into what segment, and then take action upon that. So it's like combining a bunch of things that before CDPs existed were always solo systems, and then integrating that. So a very logical step. And then CDPs got pretty big pretty quickly, I would say. Like a lot of venture capital, I think, got invested. A lot of sales teams got very busy. A lot of enterprises spend a lot of money on CDPs. And then, as with every trend, a counter trend exists, right? Where uh, new companies emerge that said you should not aggregate all this logic into one tool. You should instead have separate tools that are good at one thing, right? So you should have a reverse ETL tool. I think High Touch is probably can be credited for taking the most offensive marketing approach to attacking the CDP, right? Where they basically said like you don't want to go with that single tool for everything because it's too expensive, takes too long to implement, you're never going to be able to use it, and they do all the things 60%, right? They're never good at one of those things, right?
Mm.
So that's a debate, right? And then do you go composable CDP, which is basically you have the features of a CDP, but you have separate technologies side by side? Or do you go single CDP, cover it all within one suite? And I think there's very obvious pros and cons, but I definitely wanna dive into them. So Glenn, maybe do you wanna kick it off with do you wanna steelman the single CDP approach?
It's not for record. It's not that I'm for one or the other. I think that, like you correctly said, both have their advantages and their disadvantages, and I don't like the approach where either side says that the other one is absolutely rubbish and bad, because that doesn't necessarily make sense. Everything, and this is going to be a very consulting answer, depends on the context. It
That's
depends.
just clickbait, right?
Yeah, it just depends on the context. If you have, let's say, an up and running Snowflake instance that's been perfectly maintained, where data quality is Valhalla level, then yeah, maybe you just need a reverse ETL for the use case that you need, right? If you don't have anything and you're looking for a data collection layer, and you want to have data validation and unification, all of these type of things, and you just want to pay to make your pain go away, rather than recruit people and recruit a team, then maybe a package CDP is another option. I also think that, and that's why I said it's so 2023. If you look at Q1, Q2, 2023, there was this very much opposite of like one is the devil, the other one is an angel, right? Kind of like they were battling all the time, while you now kind of see, I feel at least, that there's more a middle ground, because the reverse ETL tools have also somehow become suites, right? Decoupled solutions, but they offer all of them, while all of the package CDPs now have reverse ETL solutions. And so you kind of like they all come together. And so in the end, I think it's somehow at the same time it's easier and more complex to choose, because they are more the same than they were before. And as a result, their speech of shooting at each other kind of went down a bit. There's one thing that I'm still convinced of, and that is that not all CDPs are created equal. And that is like the definition you gave was a very nice one. I never heard it that way, and it makes a lot of sense because of the things that I've been thinking about in the last couple of weeks and months. But in general, in my head, a CDP can be composed, and I'm using the wrong word in this context, but can contain, let's say, a number of features. But it doesn't mean that if you're a CDP, you de facto have all of them. And so if you're new in the market and you're looking for a specific solution, you can be easily sold the wrong thing, because like there's a lot of things to be said in there. I liked your definition, and then I'll shut up, for the simple reason that like all platforms now have become CDPs, right? You saw CDPs going towards engagement platforms. You see engagement platforms now becoming CDPs. And you kind of see analytics platforms also rebranding as CDPs. Why? Because it's about data activation.
Yeah.
Maybe a topic for another talk, but for me, the thing that is a mega gap or that needs to be watched out for is consent or privacy. Because my new thing, or my new obsession, or my new fear, whatever you want to call it, is that a lot of data will end up in systems it should not end up in the coming months, because it was captured because of analytics consent, and all of a sudden it's ending up in a marketing tool, or the other way around. And so very few tools actually built in consent as a module, if you will, or as a feature, what I talked about, like, right, a lot of CDPs have modules or features, and consent or consent management is not necessarily one that's been offered in a composable or a packaged CDP necessarily, and as a result, you need to build that process yourself. And for me, that's a very big blind spot in a lot of CDPs, or a space that's not been talked about a lot, which is somehow my new concern. I don't know why, but it's my new concern.
Very, very valid concern. Yeah.
So it sort of reminds me, like, the thing about, like, everything sort of becoming the same again. Like, I think there's like this, like some famous VC that said that basically in like SaaS there are like two strategies: either like decompose or you like combine, right? So at the end of the day, like, depending on where you start, you are either going in one direction or the other. And that's like, I think, what has sort of happened, with like the CDP space in general, right? I think almost everyone is sort of similar, and like has probably like base features that are like super sort of similar across the board. And I think it's like super confusing because like when you have a definition of something that could like be a combination of different things, people that are in the market buying it, they're primarily buying based on the keyword, not necessarily like the long list of things that it includes. So like you like there's a high chance that you're gonna buy the wrong thing, or like realize that the use case you actually want to do did not really work. um, so actually, like to kind of start from that, I'm sort of curious, like what is your process for you know kind of helping customers do vendor selection, because it could, like the same thing could be like so varied across like different people, different kind of companies and what they need, and like what the market defines as like what like this thing should be. Where do you typically start, right? And what is like sort of your kind of way to make sure that the risk of buying the wrong thing is minimized?
I guess that's a question for me.
Yeah, I think so. You're the
It could be
CDP
either.
vendor, right?
No, I think like
You're the
in
senior
general,
friend.
in general, I think it's an illusion to think that you can master them all. Right? In the beginning, it was kind of like you could stick with the big guys because there were only a few big guys. Today, I
Yeah.
believe the approach is very much on like, okay, show me what the playing field in your organization looks like. Are you engineering heavy? Are you not? Right?
Yeah.
And then show me your use cases. Because I can buy a tool today that will like show its full potential in 5 years, or I could start with one approach that takes care of 8 use cases the next 2 quarters, 16 more in the next, and then we can still reevaluate to switch to a full suited approach or not. You see,
Yeah.
I know I'm not
Mhm.
giving an answer directly, but it's kind of like that's how it goes. Like, what's the philosophy of the organization? Ah, we're a purebred engineering company. Well, yeah, package solution like a package CDP. Probably you just love to tinker with stuff, so therefore, like it would be more of
Yeah.
a fit to also have something more engineering oriented, like Snowplow comes in the picture, combined with a custom setup, those type of things.
Yeah.
If you have marketing people that want it lean and mean, you probably go even towards a CDP that might not even be a full-fledged CDP, but it has more engagement capabilities. So an engagement platform that has CDP functionalities for 4 or 5 of the connections that they need. So it's really about understanding, like, one, what's the culture that you have, the baseline. Two, what are the use cases, and then from there you can like start shortlisting. We have success stories with a couple of partners that we work with. We're always open to explore new technologies, but we also want to kind of guarantee, like, okay, this we vouch for this partner, we vouch for this technology because their support teams are amazing, because their sales cycle is not annoyingly long, or because their pricing is
Exactly.
transparent. Those
Yeah.
type of things. And so, because in the end, we work for the customer. We partner with technologies, but we work for the customer. So we start with what's the organization look like? What are the use cases you have? Are they complex? What's the future visibility that you have? Because everybody wants to buy technology that's still valid in the next 5 years. I'm already happy that a contract renewal after 2 years, still, if we can get up to that horizon of visibility, for a lot of organizations, it's already a big thing. And then we look into like, hey, this technology, um, is it robust? Are the teams robust? Can we count on them when we need to? Kind of like those are the criteria, or the three things we go through, I feel. And then there's a lot of end customer decision, right? Our job is to advise and to say, like, I really think that this makes sense, and I really think that this does not make sense. Like, really giving the advice, because that's why we're here, right? Having opinions, I think, is an underrated thing these days somehow, or having at least calculated opinions that take
Yeah.
into account everything of the context of the customer. But in the end, it's the customer who decides. If the customer says like, Glenn, no way I'm going to work with these guys, I'm like, okay, then we'll find another solution.
Yeah. I would say I'm trying to take it even a step further. Like I'm I'm trying also like to experiment like with new approaches. But what I really noticed is even the companies that seem like developer heavy, right? That seem to know that what they're doing. There's so much risk tied to these large IT projects that are not owned
Mm,
by IT, that are actually or that are meant for marketing. Um, my current approach is just I try to go the smallest possible, right? Like the smallest iteration possible with the least amount of technology needed, extra technology needed, the least amount
yeah.
of contracts needed, the least amount of money needed. And even though let's say they have an ambition to do 12 use cases in the year, right away, which I would already argue, okay, it's a bit ambitious if you're starting out, right?
Mm,
And then but let's say they would do those 12, then probably a CDP would be like if you put it on a drawing board, it would be the most cost efficient way to do it because you set it up once and then you can use it for all those 12 use cases.
mm.
I still try to push for the what I call the MacGyver method, the duct tape method, like because
Lean and mean.
yeah, and I really feel like so technology has gone super fast, right? And they've done a great job at marketing it, and all the pages, all their sales pages look amazing. And when the CMO looks at it, they're like, "This is what I need," because then I have like instant value when I click on the button, like, my ROAS goes up, and like it's all amazing. But it's really about figuring out what works for your brand and for your audience in the capabilities that you have, and only like once you figured that part out, then the technology is like then it's like gasoline on the fire, right? Then if you select the right technology, then you can go super fast. But before that, you're just throwing gasoline in the water, right? Like you're just polluting stuff. Like it's not helping, it's not adding anything. So yeah, I notice that I'm shying away more and more from like large solutions, although their sales teams are they really want to help you partner and go towards clients and team up and stuff, like for obvious reasons. But I really try to go for like the duct tape approach to prove it, because that's the like you need that capability. Your team, like your email marketer needs to be comfortable, like, okay, I'm gonna run in this experiment kind of mindset, and I'm gonna get this new piece of data, and then I'm gonna optimize a campaign around it. Like if they're not able to do that, you can buy them treasure data, but it's not gonna make
Mm.
them perform better.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and that's why I say like the whole ecosystem, or like what's the landscape in which it will be put, is the most important piece, right?
Yeah.
The thing I love about CDPs, and you touched upon it when you said like owned by IT, but not really owned by IT, right? Is the whole thing that um, customer data platform, or whatever the term means, doesn't really matter. But as soon as that became a thing in the industry, it was the first time, at least from my experience, that it kind of caused issues at that scale in the organization of who owns what, and like, but isn't it marketing? No, because it's the customer. And it's the first time that the whole organization kind of like started thinking about like, yeah, but today we're looking at data or experiences of a customer through silos, while actually the customer is having one experience. They don't really care if they're interacting with IT or marketing or sales, right?
100%. They don't even
And
know.
so yeah, exactly. So it's the very first time that all of a sudden you see organizations think about customer centricity, like because they need to from an operational point of view. And like it kind of starts to shape, and I hate the word, but like a transformational journey where they need to figure out, but who's gonna own the CDP? Well, who's responsible for the customer data and the customer journey as a whole, because that's not marketing, that's not sales, that's not IT. Because in the end, aren't we all working for the customer, right? IT can't say like, hey, it's not my job. Well, in the end, IT is also working for the customer, right?
Yeah.
And so it kind of like puts everybody, or especially in large organizations, through like some sort of an identity crisis, I feel, or an organizational crisis, to kind of like reflect upon like, okay, but who owns this? And like you kind of see new roles appear, like customer data, somebody needs to own that. Who's head of customer experience? I'm still waiting for that guy. We already have like head of AI with 0 use cases in production, while the last 15 years we're having customer journeys in production and nobody's chief customer officer. I'm not saying it's a
Head
valid
of
title.
buzzwords.
Yeah, but like nobody really owns that. Like
Yeah.
there's very few organizations who actually can show what the journey looks like of a customer. And I'm not saying the journey, but like a journey of a customer and how many silos or system that touches upon, and actually starts figuring out like who owns this piece, who owns this piece. If we have a problem here, who do we need to talk to? Is it Paul, or is it Sandra, or is it like Kelly, or like who do we need to talk to? Nobody really knows, because they never look into it from the customer point of view. And the CDP kind of was the first tool that was so transversal that it facilitated that conversation, which is interesting, because if you think of it, every company already had CRM, but CRM for a lot of organizations was just a glorified email system.
Yeah.
And it was owned by marketing. It was just sending out campaign emails. So I kind of enjoyed that momentum. So and that reflection that it forced. And so yes, starting small is important to show the liability, or the not the liability, the viability of the technology or the thing you're trying to achieve. But sooner or later, you're gonna hit some very like you're gonna piss off some very senior people, because all of a sudden you're walking around in their turf and like, it's my turf, it's IT, you should not be here, and like, okay, we need resources, I need to be part of a sprint, and like this is our method. Well, all of a sudden you also have the opportunity to think of like, maybe we've been thinking too much in departments and we should like flip it, and the CDP is this technology layer that facilitates that conversation that's transversal. So that's more of a philosophical understanding or thought.
Well,
customer department is the department that's missing, basically.
Yeah, I don't know. Like in the end, I think we're all working for the customer, but from an organizational point of view, like the customer goes horizontal, but organizations are built vertical, and so the customer data platforms are built or are meant to work transversal. So yeah, there's something that's not compatible with how a lot of organizations work, and I like to think that CDPs are a facilitator of change when it comes to focusing again back around the customer, which in a lot of organizations has been lost for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's it's definitely something we could spend another hour talking on. I think one thing that popped into my head when you said this was the data ownership, and this also comes into play from the privacy point of view. Right, before it was just like the marketing team was just playing around, like it was only the acquisition side of things, and then after that data ownership, like with whoever, right, what other team, and now first of all people are thinking more about the retention flow as well, and then marketing is also right, so it becomes bigger, but also like with the customer data platform or whatever other tool, like it becomes a more central role. And technology is also looking at, okay, we need data to build our product, to improve our product, to right. So you see the convergence of like product analytics and marketing analytics is an obvious use case of that. So all these things are slowly, these tectonic plates that are shifting over each other, creating these funny situations.
Yeah, we haven't even go ahead, Hussain.
Sorry. Yeah, I was actually going to say, like, one of this kind of way out there thesis I have is that we started with sort of marketing because like was closer to the customer, and we started using kind of user data for kind of doing marketing, right, and sort of improve those things, and then we moved to product, was like sort of the next thing in line. I think when we get to finance and we are using kind of customer data directly, because in some ways we are with like orders and other things, but like if we could like tie it directly to shipping and other things, you would probably have like a true kind of customer organization where end to end, it's like the same CDP data kind of used for all the use cases, not just product or marketing, right? It's basically, every use case is like fed from the same kind of data set. just organized in a different way, but like the foundational thing is sort of the same. Right now, what we see is like, you're like, the production database in some ways is source of truth, and then you're like duplicating it in different places for different use cases. And, like it doesn't really sort of resync back anyway, right? So you never really get like this true picture again, right? It's sort of like this compartmentalized thing that you're like building over and over and over.
You get like your slide deck version A, and then version
Yeah.
Hussain, and then slide deck version Glenn, and they never merge back together, right?
Yeah. So something along those lines. So this is like one of the things that I got really fascinated by. And when I sort of started MarketLytics was the idea that you have, like you have basically the idea to sort of predict customer behavior based on, like everything that you know about the customer, like the behavior, what they do, what other sort of factors might sort of impact them. But in a lot of ways, like what I sort of realized when I've sort of been doing this is that, because everything is about the customer at the end of the day, if you're running a business, it's really about like, like that experience and that like, like the loyalty that the customer gives you. Everything else is also actually sort of related to that, right? So you can actually do much better if you were to like, connect those things back into it. And to be honest, like I've never really had the chance to like, work with like, the procurement department or finance department or shipping to sort of see if this would be actually useful. But, I feel like, if we could kind of, extend like the CDP sort of, as like the central place for customer data that is used by everyone, and, then sort of, organize it, in some way. I think it could be like a really kind of interesting kind of use case for, kind of working with the customer and sort of seeing what like, how much sort of control or like visibility you have into the entire sort of business, just by kind of following that one line, through the entire business.
So you heard it here first. Hussain is rebranding CDP to Central Data Platform. This is the new trend. No, but I definitely think, makes a lot of sense. And we'll see where we end up with that stream. Glenn, you have any closing thoughts as we round up here?
I was gonna say it's very funny because you called it Central Data Platform. I think Census rebranded to Unified Data Platform last week.
Oh yeah,
like
that's
that.
true. They went for UDP. They were like, we need to use a different acronym.
Yeah, but I think in principle, everybody agrees, right? The customer needs to be at the center. There's different ways of doing it, and it's just companies like trying to make the money from the markets for their parts, right? And I think our role, or at least the role I think we should play, is to bring a bit of clarity, not by saying you are actually this or you're actually that, but actually like figuring out our customers or the companies that we work with, like what do you need? And there's multiple ways of doing it, and let's take into account your situation, your vision, your use cases, the tech you would like to use or not like to use, like your budget that you have, and then just build awesome experiences for the customers of our customers. Well, that's it, I think.
100%. I think that's a great end quote we can all agree on. We are perfectly on the hour. Thanks, guys, for joining the first Data to Value live show, and hopefully we can do this again.
Yeah, thank you.
See you.
Have a good one, guys. Cheers.
Bye.
Have a good one. Ciao.